Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you are listening. This is Talking Small Business with Terrance, the show where we help businesses go from being stuck to being unstoppable. Welcome, come on in to another exciting episode of the Talking Small Business with Terrance Leftridge here on Facebook Live via Be Live TV and streaming via podcast on all podcast platforms. We welcome you to another great episode, and we're going to be talking this week. Our topic is dealing with leadership. And as a small business owner, you are the leader of your business. You are the person that people, your employees, your clients, your customer base, you are the person that people look up to for guidance in good times as well as bad times. You are the person that people look for structure. You are the person that people look for to help guide them in the direction that they need to go. And you are the leader of the ship. You are the captain. You are the one that makes the rudder go in the direction that you want your business to go. So, we're going to be talking today about principles of leadership. And we've got a great guest on the show today. He is the president and the CEO of Strategic Solutions LLC, and he goes by the name of Velton Showell. And so let's go ahead and welcome Velton to the show. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Velton, are you in the building?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you today, Terrance? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
No, I'm fantastic, but not as good as you.
Well, thank you so much for dropping into the Talking Small Business show with Terrance Leftridge. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day to spend a little bit of time with us to talk to us about business and leadership principles. So before we get started, I always want to talk to our family, our TSBLT family, about a tip or a quote from the day. So I just want to pull up one of the quotes that I think we're going to use to take us into our conversation today. And that is basically this quote. Let me pull it up real quick so that you guys can see it on the screen. This is a quote that I'm pretty sure that you know pretty well, Belton. So let's talk about this quote. This quote says, every person at some time in their life had a desire to be an achiever. For many, this ambition was destroyed. But under the right leadership, this latent desire can come back to life. And it's up to you to be the leader. That quote sound familiar to you, Velton?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of my favorites. It's actually affixed to all of my emails. At the bottom of my email, you'll find that quote. And I'll have to tell you, my good friend Dr. Larry Rice, who is at Johnson and Wales University, first introduced me to that quote many years ago. And I promised him that I would continue to utilize that quote when I could, just because of the power behind the words. You know, their words are just one thing, but how you structure a phrase, how you structure a sentence, how you structure communication brings power to the words, and it's usually the strength of the person behind the words. You know, one of my other favorite quotes, and I'll start with this, is like, people lose interest in what you preach unless you in what you teach unless you practice what you preach.
Oh wow. Yeah, I love that. That's a good quote, and it's very familiar to a quote that I love to share every time I'm doing speaking engagements, and it's very similar. It's basically saying, if the words in your mouth don't follow the words, the if the tongue in your mouth doesn't follow the tongue in your shoe, why should I listen to you? And that's
Mm,
basically saying, if you're not walking what you're talking, then why should I even pay attention to you? And that's
absolutely.
very prevalent in this topic today as we talk about leaders, because that's one of those values that I think every leader should have. And you being the president and CEO of Strategic Solutions, I'm sure you talk to many leaders across the world, and that's one of the basic principles that every leader should have, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of it's biblical. When we pray to God, we say, "Let the words of my mouth and the lamentations of my heart be acceptable in Thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer." And there's a reason, because it's not about what you say; it's about what you feel and what's inside of you. And leadership starts inside of the person.
Wow. Okay, so here on Talking Small Business with Terrance Leftridge, before we get into the tips and principles you want to share with us today, Velton, why don't you take a second and formally introduce yourself to our TSBTL audience?
Fantastic. Well, as Terrance told you, my name is Velton Showell, and I am the president and CEO of Strategic Solutions LLC. But for the purposes of today, more importantly, I am also the founder and chief strategist of the Leadership Dynamics Academy. The Leadership Dynamics Academy is a learning experience for those who are currently in a leadership role, those who aspire to be leaders, or those who are trying to figure out how to manage the person that is leading them. Yes, that is right. Before you lead anybody else, you have to lead yourself. And sometimes leading yourself means dealing with the person who has been put in the place to lead you, that may not be leading in a fashion that you understand, that you can appreciate, or that you can follow with the right amount of energy. So basically, the foundation and I are here to help with that mission. But I spent 30 years in the hospitality industry, leading award-winning sales operations, as well as teaching, learning, and growing in a corporate environment. So I want to share those experiences. I want to share those types of lessons that I learned to help someone else grow to a level that they never thought that they could achieve. So that's who I am. That's what I'm all about, Terrance.
Well, that is a mouthful right there. So when we let's jump right into it. When we talk about leadership, Velton, what's your definition of the word leadership?
Well, leadership has multiple definitions, but one of the things that I utilize to really explain my philosophy on leadership is that leaders are environmentalists. We are charged with the responsibility to create an environment for success. That means that we want to create an environment that makes people want to achieve things that they maybe even didn't realize that they could, or understand how to, until given the right environment, the right circumstances, the right coaching, the right encouragement. There are so many aspects that we can utilize to help people. But leadership is a people oriented situation. It's not about statistics. It's not always about strategy. One of my other favorite quotes, and I love to read and I love quotes, is leadership eats strategy for breakfast.
Okay. I love it. I love it because you can have all the great strategies in the world, but if you don't have someone who's going to be able to step up, stand up, and take the lead on implementing that strategy, it's only as good as what's written on paper. Yeah, I love to use sports analogies when we talk about leadership, and
Oh yeah.
every team looks good on paper at the beginning of the year. But it's when you get into implementing what you put on paper where these teams differentiate themselves by their leadership, by their implementation, by their ability to follow through on what the leader has put into place. And it's really, I think, the responsibility of the leader to make sure what was put on paper actually is what turns out to be the product that's put on the field. Would you agree with that?
Wholeheartedly, wholeheartedly, because there are many strategic plans that sit on a shelf until next year, when we bring them down, dust them off, blow the dust off of them, and try to figure out, what did we say we were going to do this year? How can we implement that next year? Because 90% of what we said we didn't remember, so we didn't do it.
Right.
So, it's one of those things where if you've got a plan, that's great, but you have to implement the plan. And there are a lot of reasons that people don't implement the plan. One of the main reasons is the plan is usually written by, excuse the expression, leadership. And the people on the front lines who are supposed to be part of the implementation either didn't have any input, don't understand it, or don't believe in it because of their lack of involvement in preparation and determination. So therefore, they don't have a vested interest in its success.
Wow. And that's so true. And we're going to jump into some of those. Those are just some of the principles that you're going to find in Velton's upcoming book later on this year. It's called Leadership Dynamics: 52 Principles Every Successful Leader Understands. And before we jump into a couple of the principles you want to share with us today, we have a comment from Sean Segal. He says that being a leader isn't about ability, it's about responsibility. So
Hmm.
touch on that for a little bit, and then we'll jump into the principles you want to share with us today. How does ability versus responsibility work when you're trying to be a leader?
Well, I think what Sean is saying is exactly what I had alluded to a few minutes ago. Creating that environment. You, as the leader, are responsible for the environment that your team exists in. And you have to create an environment that encourages them to take risks, encourages them to do things that may not have a direct personal impact on their success. One of the principles in the book and one of the quotes that I use is from you talked about a sports analogy, is one of my favorite coaches, who's Phil Jackson. And Phil said that good teams become great when the players trust each other enough to replace me with we. And for them to get into that type of mindset, you as a leader or a coach have to create the environment that allows it to be okay to put me away for the betterment of we. So responsibility falls back on the leader.
I love it. And there's another quote that I love to say: it's not about where you go or where I go, it's about where we go. So you got to drop that ego. And I think once people
I love it.
understand that, once people understand it, that it's not about the individuals, it's about the team, and that the leader sets the tone for the team. He's not the team, he just sets the tone for the team. Then that team can go further and faster. We're hanging out with Velton Showell here on Talking Small Business with Terrance, Leftridge. And we're going to jump into just some tidbits that you'll find in his upcoming book, Leadership Dynamic: 52 Principles That Every Successful Leader Understands. And before we jump into the actual tips, you talk a lot in your book about this thing called culture. What
Hmm.
what do you mean when you talk about culture, and how does a leader define the culture of a company?
Well, it's Sean. You put a quote in there that was, or a message in there that is probably going to resonate throughout this conversation. But when you talk about creating a culture, culture is based on environment. Think back and look back at history. Every culture was created based on the environment that the individuals existed in. Even back to the days of nomadic tribes, or if you want to say cave people, the Neanderthal man, the culture was a derivative of the environment in which they existed. So, as a leader, we have to create that environment that allows us to then create the culture that is there for people to be successful, or the culture that we want to exist within our organization. You know, this is about life strings. This is about feelings. This is about how people look at things. So, though all those little nuances are part of creating a culture, which is a derivative of an environment.
And when we talk about culture and we talk about business, every business is in the business to be productive. Every business, I hope, is in the business to be a high performance producing type of business. So when we look at your book and we look at the principles that you're going to be talking about in the Leadership Academy, we want to talk about creating a high performance culture in every business. So, how do
Absolutely.
you recommend we go about creating a high performance culture in our businesses?
Well, what's in a high performance culture? The one ingredient in a high performance culture is energy, and it's positive energy. So the question that you have to ask yourself, and the question I ask you today as a leader, how do you create high level positive energy in your environment? What is it that you do that keeps people at a high level of enthusiasm, a high energy level that wants them to be creative, that wants them to take risks, that encourages them to take risks, that allows them to make mistakes without the fear of retaliation, what allows them to do things that may be looked upon as abnormal today, but become the normalities of tomorrow. One of the biggest things that keeps us away from a positive, high energy culture is that we're stuck with our old paradigms. We're not willing to take the risk. We're not willing to step out there on the cutting edge. And because we're not, we don't encourage our people to do that. Well, to be great, you can't be average. One of my books that I read was called Average is Over.
Mm.
And if you just want to be average, if you just want to maintain the status quo, then you can't create a high performance culture because there are too many fences, there are too many obstacles, there are too many issues that stand in the way of you doing things that other people won't. So tomorrow you can have the things that other people can't.
I love it. I love it. And hopefully your business is not a business that you created just so that you could fit in with the rest of the pack. And that's an average business. And
Mhm.
here at Talking Small Business with Terrance Leftridge, we believe in being unstoppable. We believe that your business wasn't just created for it to fit in. Your business was created for it to stand out. And in order for it to stand out, you can't do average. You've got to be talking about what Velton's sharing with us today, having that high level of energy in your company and creating that high performance culture that's necessary to make that business stand out and make other customers and clients want to be attracted to your business versus all the other businesses that might be out there doing the exact same thing that you do. So, as we move on into the show, Velton, you wanted to share some tips with us on creating that high performance
Mhm.
culture. And one of the things that you mentioned in order to do that is that you've got to be able to listen like your life depended on it. I love that. But why don't you tear some of the meat off that bone?
Well, listening like your life depended on it is really about a couple of principles. And I touch on one of the other principles in an earlier part of the book. But the real issue is communication. A lot of times you're taught in leadership that communication is how you deliver the message, how you tell people or give people instructions on what's going on and what you expect. But the real issue with creating a high performance involvement is not just the communication that goes outward, because communication is a two-way street. The real issue, the meat of the principle is now that you've communicated and you've given this information, or that there's something going on, are you listening? Are you processing? Are you taking in the information that's being given to you, that's being afforded to you by the people around you, so that you can get a better idea of what's going on, a better understanding of how people are operating, a better knowledge of the cohesiveness or lack of within the organization, so that you can work with your team to make the proper adjustments to go from where you are to where you want to be. The adjustments that take you from good to great are sometimes in the minds of others, not just in the minds of leaders. So you have to listen to people and understand where they're coming from or what their ideas are, and then process that information. Some of it's great, some of it's good, some of it's not. But you have to listen to be able to process the information that's going to make a difference in the culture, in the performance, and of the minds of the people around you.
You know, it wasn't until I got older in life that I understood this adage that the creator gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason. I thought it was just so that we could aesthetically look good in our face. But in life as well as in business, we understand now that you've got to listen. Some of the greatest minds in the room don't belong to you. And you're not always the
Mhm.
smartest person in the room. And if you are the smartest person in the room,
Get
then
out.
to find another room. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And,
Well,
and
Terrence,
yes,
my great grandfather Charles, when I was a little boy, used to sit me on his knee with and tell me that he said a little bit. He said, "Sonny," that's what he used to call me. He said, "Let me tell you something. God gave you two ears and one mouth to listen twice as much as you speak."
absolutely.
And then truer words were never spoken.
Yes. And you carry it over into business, recognizing that some of the greatest things that are going to happen in your business are going to come from the people that you have connected to your business, both internally and externally. But you've got to be willing to listen like your life depended on it. I love it. Let's move into the second tip that you mentioned. The second tip that you mentioned is that you've got to, after you've listened like your life depends on it, you've got to manage it by walking around. What do you mean by that?
Well, this is all about creating an environment. And as I've been alluded, I'm an avid reader. And there was a book written back in the 90s called In Search of Excellence, and a sequel called A Passion for Excellence. And in that book, there's a passage where there's a philosophy of management by walking around, observing and taking in what's going on in the environment. Now, a lot of us walk around, or a lot of managers walk around, and they're looking for things that are out of place, out of order, or not operating at an optimal level. The Conversely, management by walking around is walking around looking for people doing things that are exceptional, things that are on the cutting edge, things are that they're challenging the status quo, things that are moving the operation forward in a positive vein and making a big issue of it. Every time you find somebody doing something exceptional, make a big issue of it. Congratulate them in public. Give them that old pat on the back in public. Bring other people's attention to the fact that they're doing something exceptional. Because remember something, nobody gets up out of bed in the morning wanting to have a bad day. But
Absolutely.
everybody gets up wanting to be recognized for something, some level of performance, or some issue by you, the leader, and those people around you. So if you can start to do that on a regular basis and walk around, and everybody, instead of when they see you coming, they run for cover or shudder with fear. If they are looking forward to allowing you to see what they're doing so they can get those accolades, the energy and the environment around them just starts to explode in a positive way.
Absolutely. You know, we like you said, we all want to be recognized. And I look back to like when we were in school, at least when I was in school, before the internet and technology and all these digital things, the teacher would put your every student's name on a chartboard in front of
Mm-hmm.
the class. And whenever they did something great, they would get a green star. And if you got enough green stars throughout the course of the week, then you were up for a prize. So it was in order for the teacher to know who would get the prize, the teacher would have to pay attention to what the children and the students were doing in order to set out those awards.
Mm-hmm.
But as we grow up, we seem to get away from those things that worked for us when we were kids. And that's the same way in business. We got away from it. It became more that where your employees are expected to do something because you're paying them to do
Oh, wow.
that's great. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
But your employees are your ambassadors. And that goes well beyond the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that they come in and do the work of the business. If you are treating your employees with a high level energy that you expect them to give back, and you are recognizing not only the areas that need improvements, but the areas that they're doing great in, then that's going to keep that energy high, because energy feeds off of energy, right? High
Absolutely.
energy feeds off of other energy. And as you,
Absolutely.
as the leader, if you're walking around and you're managing the things that you need to manage, but also recognizing the things that are excellent in your employees and your business, that's going to make you, the culture of your business, thrive even more. Would you agree?
I agree, and it's interesting because we you hit on a couple of things. Number one is there's an expectation that everything is going to be a certain way. Yeah, we all have expectations, but expectations are just a figment of our imagination until the implementation happens on the other end and it meets that level. I'm not for 1 minute trying to tell you that every time you walk around, everything's going to be perfect. Because you're going to walk around and you're going to see things that are not functioning correctly, not operating at an optimal level, not following the path that you wanted to create. And that's okay, because what you want to do when you see those things is make a note of it and you counsel in private. You counsel in a one-on-one environment. You take people behind closed doors and you correct the the behavior or the performance that you don't expect to see. You never do any of that in public. So people in the public never encounter a negative relationship or a negative moment with you. They only see the positive side of what you're doing in the operation. They know the negative exists because people come out of that room and they may not be totally confidential in and share what happened,
Yeah.
but that's okay. You didn't make it a public forum. A lot of times in business, we see somebody doing something that's out of kilter, and we make it a point to make it a scene right there, and
Yes.
that creates a negative environment. That creates a a situation where people look at it and go, "Oh wow, did you see what happened?" Versus, "Man, did you see what he did with with
So and so.
yeah, so and so the other day? That was fantastic, and I want some of that." And that's what we want. We want people to say, "I want some of that."
Right. It's all about congratulating in public, but counseling in private. I
Mm,
think that that's a great point that you brought out, because people want to see the recognition. So that motivates people to do something to get the recognition as well. But the counseling, you want to do that in private so that you are making sure that you're continuing to treat your employees like ambassadors of your business, while you are coaching and counseling them to become better, so that they can in turn receive those congratulations in the future.
absolutely. There's a couple of things, Terrence, and I know we got to move ahead, but I want to make sure that people understand this. When you counsel somebody for negative performance, it takes 3 strokes for every poke. You might want to write that down if you're listening. It takes 3 strokes for every poke. Every time you tear somebody down, you've got to lift them up 3 times to get them back to the same level they were in their self image before they get back into the work environment. So every time you tear somebody down, it takes 3 times that much energy to lift them back up.
I love that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna put that in my arsenal of quotes and hold on to it. 3 strokes for every poke. You want to make sure that you are taking that extra time to build them back up after, and this is important to put out there too, after it's perceived that you're bringing them down. Because every time you counsel somebody, might not be because they did something bad. It
Mhm.
might be because they didn't do it the way your company does it, or the way, or they didn't think about doing it in the most effective way. And many times our egos don't allow us to see that. All they see is that
Absolutely.
we're being cut down.
I'm
So
being
that's
cut
why it's
down.
important to take those extra steps to bring them back up, so they understand what the what the admonition was, and they understand what the counseling was and what the corrective action is to do it the way the company wants to do it. Great points. Three strokes for every poke. I'm going to use that in a couple of different arenas. Okay. Tip number four, Velton. We're hanging out with Velton Showell, the CEO of Strategic Solutions and the founder of Leadership Dynamics Academy. The tip number four to creating a positive, high energy, high level culture is that you want to search for the answers and not make assumptions. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, there's a saying that says, uh, truth is in reality. And a lot of times when we see something or we enter into a situation, we don't understand exactly what happened. We don't understand exactly what's going on. We start to get bits and pieces, and then we assume based on a little bit of information the rest. We really don't dig into a situation deep enough to truly and fully understand what's going on from the results side, what's going on from how we got from where we were to this point, how things are put together, how people are feeling about it, uh, how we are doing as it relates to our plan. We assume, based on the fact that things are going okay, that everything will move forward the same way. We assume that if there was a problem, there was something that happened that was negative or derogatory based on the performance an individual. We assume something, but we really don't understand what the answers are. So, there used to be an old adage that, when you assume, you make a you know what out of you, not me. But in this kind of environment, it's you and me because
Right.
we're a team. So if I make an assumption based on what I think happened, and it's not really what truly happened, I'm going to make that you know what out of you and me because we're all going to lose. So, as a leader, we've got to make sure that we understand and we take the time to find the answers, to find the situations, to find the solutions, and not make the assumptions that may take us somewhere don't want to be.
I love it. That's some great advice. Great advice. Don't make assumptions, search for the answers. And those are just four tips that you can find in the upcoming book from our guest this afternoon, this morning, this evening, depending on when you are listening to the podcast. Velton Showell, President, CEO of Strategic Solutions, and the founder of the Leadership Dynamics Academy. Take a couple of seconds and talk about your upcoming book, Leadership Dynamics 52 Principles That Every Successful Leader Understands.
Leadership Dynamics was the book was actually written based on a lot of interviews and conversations I had with successful leaders and experience from a personal perspective over the 30 years where I was in corporate America and 20 years where I led teams. There are so many things that we take for granted or that we glaze over that are really important to developing our leadership principles and our values that will take us uh, to a successful leadership environment for us and for the people. So, what I did is I took the time to sit down and bring together a lot of the principles that were given to me by those individuals I interviewed and that I learned over the years. And I put them into one book. And there's 52 of them. The focus is if you take one principle and you just ingrain yourself in that principle for a week, 7 days you focus on just that principle, just that issue to try to ingrain that or intertwine that in your leadership style. It will change who you are and what you do as a leader. So I want you to, I wanted people to have 52 of them so that they can refer back to them, refer and work on them for 7 days. And, you don't flip an ocean liner out in the ocean in 30 seconds. It takes time changing your leadership style or improving your leadership style will take some time and effort on your behalf. So this is just a guide to help you get there. And I'm looking forward to sharing it. And I'm looking forward to people sharing with me what they got out of it. The book is at the editor right now, and the academy is open. If you want to start to get into the Leadership Dynamics Academy, right now it's got open enrollment, which will be closing soon. But you can go to www.leadershipdynamicsacademy.com, and all of the information that I share. I have a show that I do every Tuesday called the Executive Think Tank, Tuesday at 2. And these are the concepts and the principles that are discussed. And I bring in experts like Terrance and other people who are on the front line to talk about leadership.
I love it. So you can get more information not only about the upcoming book. I also know our little bird told me that there's going to be a workbook that goes along with the book, as well as
Yes.
some powerful products and programs and online services that you can get by going over to leadershipdynamicsacademy.com. Leadershipdynamicsacademy.com. Velton Showell, President and CEO, founder of the Leadership Dynamics Academy. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on Talking Small Business with Terrance Leftridge. Let's give you the final word.
Well, you know what? Here's one of the things that I will leave you with. Leadership, like everything else in life, is a transformation. And to transform yourself, you have to be willing to make a change. To transform your thinking, it'll transform your world. But you have to take the first step. Are you willing to take that step and do the things that other people won't so that tomorrow you can have the things that other people can? I think you are, and I'm looking forward to seeing your success. I'm Velton Showell. Thank you for your time today, and go ahead and make it a great week, month, and year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Velton. As again, you guys, you can go get more information about the Leadership Academy simply by going to his website, leadershipdynamicsacademy.com. Check out his show each and every week, and you can get more information about that on the website as well. So thank you, Velton. Don't hang up, but I'm going to put you back down in the green room. And thank you so much for spending time with Talking Small Business with Terrance Leftridge.
My pleasure.
All right, you guys. So you heard it here. Building a culture, building a high energy level type of culture in your business is something that you can achieve. You just got to be willing to put in the work. You've got to be able to listen. You've got to be able to manage your surroundings, your people. You've got to be able to understand that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room in order for your company, your business to grow. And you've got to be able to search for the answers and not make those assumptions. If you do those things, you're going to create a positive atmosphere within your company, and your company soon is not going to be just one of those companies that fit in, but they're going to be one of those companies that stand out, and you're going to have an unstoppable stream of clients, products, and revenue for your business. That's our time here Talking Small Business with Terrance Leftridge. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you watched us on the live stream or if you're listening to us on the podcast on all platforms across the nation. We appreciate you, and we want you to come back for future episodes of Talking Small Business with Terrance, where we help your business move from being stuck into being unstoppable. And as always, wherever you are in the world today, don't just make it a great day. Go out, build a confident, high-level energy culture for your business, and make it an unstoppable day. Take care.